I'm Travis Van Engelen. I am the Watershed Stewardship Specialist with the Severn Sound Environmental Association. Just want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. And hello to everyone who might be watching the recording at a later date. We're happy to present another Hogg Creek information session. Before we get started, we already mentioned, but we'll keep the microphones muted and the videos off as we're planning to record this session, and it'll be going on our YouTube channel. And we'll be happy to receive questions at the end of each presentation. And if you want, you could turn your camera on while you're asking a question. Just before we get started, I want to acknowledge that the following is part of the Watershed Stewardship Hogg Creek Project. This project has received funding support from the Government of Ontario. Such support does not indicate endorsement by the Government of Ontario of the contents of this material. So today I just want to introduce our guest speaker. We have Tobias-Murray, who is the Farmland Access and Agricultural Planning Coordinator with Ontario Farmland Trust. Ben completed his master's at the University of Guelph in Rural Planning and Development with a major research paper focusing on the economic and social barriers facing new and non-succession farmers. Now his work with Ontario Farmland Trust primarily surrounds the startup of the Farmland Access Program, which I think will be the main topic of his presentation today. So thank you for joining us today, Ben, and I will stop sharing and you could share your presentation.
Awesome. So good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Ontario Farmland Trust, I want to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to present here today. My name is Tobias-Murray, and I am the Farmland Access and Agricultural Planning Coordinator at OFT. I've been with OFT since January of 2025, starting as a rural planning student intern while I was completing my master's in rural planning and development at the University of Guelph, and then moving into my current role once completing my studies. I don't come from a farming background, actually. However, my exposure to the agriculture industry came when I was 14 years old, where I would spend my weekends during the fall months working at an apple orchard in Copetown, Ontario. I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but my tenure in the agriculture sector continued on when I entered my post-secondary studies. I spent 4 years working in the turfgrass industry. Having the opportunity to work in the agriculture sector showed me the positive offerings that farming brings us. The opportunity to contribute to this work through Ontario Farmland Trust is really a true privilege, and I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you all today about what this looks like and the work that we get to do at the Ontario Farmland Trust. So who are we? Excuse me. Ontario Farmland Trust was founded in 2004 by a group of researchers at the University of Guelph who identified the rapid loss of farmland occurring in Ontario. OFT is one of the only provincial-wide land conservation organizations with a mission dedicated to the preservation and protection of Ontario's agricultural landscape. I also want to be clear that when we are discussing farmland, we are discussing not only the agricultural, but also the natural and cultural features that make up the landscape. Farmland is the literal foundation of the agri-food sector that provides us with locally produced foods and employs more than 750,000 Ontarios, or I guess 1 in 10 of the province's labor force. We contribute over $51 billion annually to the province's GDP. And it's so vital for our communities that farmland is protected because it is the true foundation of many livelihoods. It is more important now than ever that we protect our agricultural landscapes, as Ontario has lost 20% of its farmland in the last 40 years alone. And at the rate of farmland loss that we're losing today, it has nearly doubled as Ontario loses 319 acres of farmland per day. And at that rate, within 100 years, we would have no farmland left. Once farmland is developed, it is gone forever. So I just want to give a quick overview of our mission as well. As an organization, our mission is to protect and preserve Ontario farmlands and associated agricultural, natural, and cultural landscapes of food production for the benefits of Ontarians for today and future generations. So to date, OFT has protected 2,700 acres of farmland across 26 farms within Ontario since our incorporation. And just here, I'm going to talk about our program slash our initiatives. At OFT, we are involved with a number of initiatives contributing to the preservation and protection of farmland and its future. What some would say is our main focus is farmland protection, which is a process that we facilitate through the utilization of conservation easement agreements, as well as more recently through the donation of farmland. But this is something that I'm going to get a little bit more or give a little bit more detail on later on in this presentation. As well, OFT is constantly engaging in policy discussion as we often provide ERO submissions as well as engage in initiatives through examples such as supporting a future vision for the Dauphin Rouge Agricultural Preserve and the Aggregates Working Group. And furthermore, OFT is constantly pursuing education and community engagement initiatives, webinars, attending farmers markets, agricultural events such as Canada's Outdoor Farm Show, which I was actually at earlier this week, our yearly Farmland Forum, or even presenting to groups like you. Through this, our team is constantly educating and engaging with communities across the province. So context is everything to me, and these next few slides I want to go through provide insight to why the work we do at Ontario Farmland Trust is so important, as well as why farmland protection is so important to us. So I love pictures and I love maps, so I'll tell you about this one right here. This map shows the Greater Golden Horseshoe and surrounding area, and the yellow, I don't know if my cursor is coming up on your screen or not, but the yellow that you see here represents the prime agricultural land, which is our most adaptable and productive land. And you can imagine from that the impact that any expansion of urban boundaries has on our farmland. Coming from a rural planning background, this is why it is important to have good urban planning policies as they help protect farmland from urban sprawl, as well as support the creation of complete communities. With this, I always believe that providing a local context is important when we're discussing urban sprawl and development. In regard to Simcoe County, between 2006 and 2021, approximately 50,403 acres of farmland were lost, with 12,693 of these acres being lost between 2016 and 2021. Previous initiatives such as Bill 23, Bill 39, which opened up the Greenbelt for development, and more recent initiatives such as Bill 5 and the proposed construction of the Highway 413 provide us insight into how farmland is continuously threatened. And it's not just urban sprawl that's impacting farmland loss. Something that I see a lot around my community is proposed aggregate development. And with this, one of the factors impacting farmland loss includes aggregate extraction. Now, this is something that may seem a little bit backwards, but agricultural land is actually not protected from aggregate extraction. And just so we're all on the same page when we are discussing aggregate, aggregate is referring to the stones, sand, or gravel that's found underneath the soil. A common misconception about aggregate deposits revolves around the idea that these are just trapped resources. However, the reality of this is these deposits serve as a vital component of productive aggregate soil. And these layers work together to create conditions for which crops can thrive. And removing these aggregate products reduces the productivity of the land. And even if the land is rehabilitated back to what an aggregate company would describe as agricultural condition, it will never achieve the same level of productivity it would have before extraction. And of course, another topic impacting the agriculture sector that I'm sure we're all familiar with is climate change, which is resulting in a variety of impacts. This includes changing precipitation patterns, such as more intense rain and longer dry periods. This also includes changing temperature patterns, including more extreme heat and warmer winters, which leads to greater numbers of pests as well as invasive species. Farmers are already seeing an increase in floods, droughts, new pests, and weed challenges, as well as changes in crop and livestock breed variability. And for land designation limitations, currently most protections for farmland outlined in the provincial land use planning policies are focused on protecting prime agricultural land. And yes, prime land is found where Ontario is facing the greatest pressures for development. Makes sense. People settled where there was food and water available. And with this, it is important that we take a moment and reflect on how truly special the agricultural landscape within Ontario is. Ontario's agriculture sector has the ability to produce over 200 different types of commodities on a commercial scale, both on prime and non-prime ag lands. Tender fruit crops like grapes, peaches, they do really well on sandy soil that drains quickly, but might not have been classified as prime. Lower class soils are also really good for grazing animals such as sheep, cattle, as well as they help maintain pasture land and habitat for species at risk like the bobolink. And I also want to talk about the importance of a diverse sector. Diversity is the key to a resilient agricultural sector. Currently, Ontario's agricultural land base is capable of producing a wide variety of crops, as I alluded to with the 200 products we produce. And this is one of the reasons why Ontario's agriculture sector is as strong as it is. The lack of protections for lower class farmland means that this land may be more susceptible to non-agricultural development. Having the farmland on which we can produce a wide variety of crops, even if it is not as prime agriculture, or excuse me, even if it is not classified as prime agriculture land, is a key to protecting the resilience of our agriculture sector for the sake of future generations. And with this, it's important to talk about what the current state of agriculture is right now and what the future of agriculture is looking like. A large problem that we're seeing right now in the agriculture sector revolves around the fact that about 40% of farmers are expected to retire in the next 10 years. And of these 40%, 66% do not have a succession plan in place. To put it simply, if we do not have farmers, we do not have farmland. We cannot begin to think about protecting farmland without thinking about a greater plan to support pathways for the future generations of farmers to come. While temporary foreign workers have been a proposed solution, there are still many social justice issues that accompany this. And as well, we're also seeing the rise of farmland continue to rise. When I did my major research paper, I believe it was around $24,000 as the average price of an acre in Ontario. But this increase is due to several factors, including the availability of farmland, which is shrinking, and farms often need to expand in order to maintain and remain financially viable. But then the catch is they often have to compete with developers who are bidding on farmland, speculating that they can one day develop the land. And developers will do something where, they will they will do 1 year leases for farmers until they develop the land, but these 1 year leases don't really work. And this is essentially because, you're investing into your farming practice, and 1 year doesn't give a farmer enough time necessarily to establish something like, let's say, an apple orchard or a blueberry orchard, as those type of crops take time to actually become initiated and more fruitful. And then, of course, this is also keeping the price of farmland at unattainable levels for the next generation. And we should be concerned about a future where farmland is not owned by the agricultural community. This also undermines the ability for farmers to make a decent living or have extra revenue to reinvest into their business because their capital is tied up in paying off the land. This adds more stress to an already very challenging life for those who produce food for our communities, as farmers right now are dealing with some of the most widespread mental health challenges out of most professions. And of course, access to housing in agriculture areas and rural communities is increasingly challenging. And this is something that we definitely saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, as we saw a lot of urbanites move to more rural communities. And this is something that we haven't really seen before. And what this caused is this cause for the price of homes in rural communities to skyrocket and price many of the local residents out of being able to afford homes in their community, as well as homes that were close to their place of work. Now, I also want to touch on food security. Without local farmland, we cannot produce local food, which is an essential component of food security. Currently, Ontario is a net food importer, and we import about $20 billion annually worth of food, while we export about $10 annually worth of food. Now, a study that was done by the Greenbelt in 2015 outlined that if Ontario had a provincial priority where we produced half of the food that we import, this would increase local jobs while decreasing emissions from transportation. But the other thing that we need to talk about is the danger of relying heavily on exports. We've seen this especially in the years since COVID as the impacts of climate change with floods and wildfires, as well as global instability such as the war in Ukraine. Furthermore, places where we rely heavily on food imports, such as the US, are also seeing a rapid growing rate of farmland loss as the US loses 2,000 acres of farmland per day. We're vulnerable overall to food supply chain disruptions and variable growing conditions abroad, which is why it's important that we make sure that we are including local farmland and having a local growth initiative. And I want to pivot a little bit and I want to talk about ecosystem services. Farmland makes valuable contributions to human well-being, to our survival, and our quality of life. 20% of the 11.8 million acres of farmland in Ontario is made up of natural landscapes, whether that's forest or natural wetlands. In ecology, we call these ecosystem services. You can see the vast diversity of services on the blue wheel that's right over here. Um, Within Simcoe County alone, about 15% of farmland, or 72,000 acres, are made up of woodland, wetland, as well as natural land. With this, farmlands have a wide ability of ecological benefits. This includes the ability to filter and store water, sequester carbon, and mitigate the effect of floods. I'll highlight this a little bit more in the upcoming slides, but this highlights the overall importance that farmland is playing in Simcoe County. And it further highlights the importance of protecting farmland, as protecting farmland protects our local ecosystems. And touching briefly on habitat connectivity, habitat fragmentation is a great concern for conservationists. Wildlife rely on connected lands in order to thrive, to feed, to nest, and breed, to forage. Protecting farmlands also ensures both local and migratory animal services, or excuse me, migratory animals are able to meet their needs as they move across the landscape, supporting local ecological services. Excuse me, just a moment. And I touched a little bit on carbon sequestration, and I want to take a second to further discuss this as it's a bit of a hot topic right now in climate change. So for clarification, carbon sequestration occurs when carbon from one living thing or once living matter is held in the ground. And soils have an incredible capacity to sequester carbon. This means farmers are uniquely poised to participate in climate change mitigation through carbon sequestration. These practices are not just ecologically beneficial, but financially beneficial as well, as they also improve soil health and the overall productivity of farmers' crops. Many of these practices are well suited to soils that have been classified as lower class, and this includes permanent pasture for grazing or perennial production. Therefore, the more farmland that we can successfully protect in perpetuity, the more farmland we can put to work for the environment. And I also just want to touch on water quality and availability. Farmland is also key in water quality and availability, as farmland is capable of absorbing and storing water. And this is beneficial because it slows the speed at which water enters and runs through a water course, preventing downstream erosion and flooding. Now, in contrast, when soil is paved over by non-agricultural development, it creates impermeable surfaces, and this prevents water from infiltrating the soil. Instead, it sends it into stormwater management systems. This puts more pressure on both natural and municipal systems and does not give the soil the opportunity to filter the water of any pollutants it may have picked up. As a result, any pollutants present in the water may pass directly into the water system, which can impact the health of the body of water that receives it. It also prevents groundwater resources from being recharged by rainwater, which is essential for municipalities that rely on groundwater for their drinking water. And going back to our mission, this is why when we talk about farmland, we are protecting more than just land that produces food, but also the natural and cultural aspects that make up the landscape. Food production is so critical for a stable and secure society, but it's also so much more than that. All of this is why OFT works to protect Ontario's agricultural land from being lost forever. We are working to raise awareness about farmland loss and the various causes of it. We present to different community groups, attend fairs, farm shows, or even school groups. We host an annual farmland forum every March where we bring together community planners, farmers, researchers, and community members and politicians to hear from experts on the latest concerns to farmland protection and engage in a dialogue that explores possible solutions to these issues. We also engage in policy discussion and development as we regularly submit comments on changes to provincial policies that affect farmland and encourage others to get involved at their local level of government. And of course, we secure farmland by either receiving the land as donations or we put it in trust as we work with landowners to place farmland conservation easements on their properties. Now, I want to share a little bit more information on farmland easement agreements. And this is because many people aren't aware that they exist as a conservation tool, yet they provide some of the strongest levels of protection for a property from other forms of land use. Farmland easement agreements are private legal contracts negotiated between property owners and, in the case of us, the OFT, and then they are registered to the property title. OFT works with property owners to develop provisions that limit or restrict land uses that are not compatible with agriculture. And it's important to note here that easements do not restrict normal farm practices, as they are designated to support a wide range of farm types and agricultural uses. With this, no two farmland easements are the same, as each one is tailored to the land protection interests and needs of the property owner. When a farmland owner registers an easement on their property, they are compensated with a charitable tax receipt from Ontario Farmland Trust for the difference between the property's fair market value before the easement is in place and the fair market value after the easement has been put on the property. The value is then determined, the value for this is determined by a qualified appraiser. Ontario Farmland Trust does not do that process. Easement agreements, they also have a variety of benefits to landowners as they have the ability to make land more affordable to the next generation of farmers. They can also protect an entire farm property or protect a specific area of a property, as the protection of areas such as forests, wetlands can be included in the farmland easement agreement. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about farmland donations as well. This kind of relates to the work that I get to do primarily with OFT, because as a result of protecting farmland, OFTs even began to receive inquiries from landowners who are looking to donate their farm. So in February of 2024, OFT received its first fee simple donation for a farm property in Tiverton, Ontario. So just Kincardine area in Bruce County. The farm was donated by the late Eugene and Anne Bourgeois, who left us a 37-acre farm. And with this, OFT began to explore how we help the future generations of farmers. And this is being done through the initiation of our Farmland Access Program. And the Farmland Access Program looks to provide new, young, and underrepresented farmers with affordable access to farmland. The donation of a farmland like the one in Tiverton allows us to pursue this sort of initiative, as well as play an active role in preserving Ontario farmlands while helping to grow the next generation of farmers in Ontario. As previously mentioned, 40% of farmers will retire in the next 10 years, which leaves a massive gap in our agricultural workforce. Through our Farmland Access Program, OFT can contribute to filling this looming gap. And it's not just farmland access that we're initiating at our farm. OFTs also initiate demonstration plots at our farm property, which will look at best management practices for production within the Bruce County area. And this was made possible through funding given to us by OMAFA, and this will allow us to share the knowledge that we learn from our demonstration plots with farmers throughout the community. And what's neat about this work that we're doing in Tiverton is this is something that can be translated anywhere we receive a farmland donation within the province. The opportunity for OFT to receive a farmland donation within the Simcoe County area would allow us to continue these initiatives and support farming within the Simcoe area. And I want to talk a bit about our impact. This map is an exciting one. So you'll see here these red tractors on my screen. So each red tractor represents one of our easement properties. Each year we add a couple of new properties, and our current projects underway are represented by the white and blue dots. So all these ones here, you can see a lot in Eastern Ontario. We have about 27 properties waiting to get protected through OFT, and we definitely wish we could protect them all immediately, but it's a long process that requires resources, and we only have so much capacity to do a few properties per year. During the pandemic, we definitely saw a significant increase in interest for potential easement donors, as well as development was speeding up and creeping closer to farm properties. And even more recently, the impacts we anticipate from the Build More Homes Faster Act, the DRAP or Duffins Rouge Agricultural Preserve Repeal Act, and the proposed Highway 413 has many people concerned over the impact this will have on the availability of farmland and the sustainability of the agri-food sector. And we're super proud of this map. However, the reality is the rate of protection isn't keeping up with the rate in which we are losing farmland. So in the interest of time, I want to thank everyone so much for listening, and definitely encourage you all to check out our website and learn more about the different initiatives that we're pursuing at Ontario Farmland Trust. And we're always looking to further our cause and encourage others to become involved. Several ways in which you can do that. You can become a member, sign up for our monthly newsletter, donate to our cause, or even sign up as a volunteer. So with that, I'm going to leave you all with my email. Our emails at Ontario Farmland Trust are really easy to remember. It's just our first name and then at ontariofarmlandtrust.ca. And our website is right there at the bottom, ontariofarmlandtrust.ca. So thank you so much for your time, everyone. I really, really appreciate it. And if you have any questions about some of the content I discussed here, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thanks so much.
Today, the focus of my presentation will be on healthy streams. If you were a part of our workshop, our info session last time, Nikki Priestman did a presentation on watersheds and or the water quality monitoring aspect of SSEA. And as she discussed in that presentation, watersheds are areas where all water drains to a common point. Precipitation and groundwater flows through the drainage paths of streams and tributaries into one common point. And in our case, that's the Severn Sound. So even if you don't live directly beside a stream, the water that runs off your property can eventually make its way there. So healthy streams depend on the conditions of the whole watershed, as we're all connected by water. And there's a map there of each of our subwatersheds. So just a bit of a refresher of what this Hogg Creek subwatershed looks like. So it has an area of 60 kilometers squared, and the longest headwaters to outlet distance is 17 kilometers. So the headwaters flow south to north, where it eventually outlets into the Hogg Bay, part of the Greater Severn Sound. If you're interested in some of the further details about the actual Hogg Creek and its conditions, you can check out Nikki's presentation on our YouTube channel. We just got that posted the other day. Our YouTube channel is Severn Sound EA. Just to show a bit more about the Hogg Creek subwatershed, this map shows the different land use types. So as you can see, it's a pretty good mix. That darker brown color indicates the agricultural land cover. And then that lime green color is showing the woodland cover at 40%. And then the lighter beige green is showing the wetland cover, and that's 11%. So why do streams matter, and why do we care about streams? There are many benefits of healthy streams. Healthy streams provide habitat and food sources for fish and wildlife. They transport organic matter, seeds, sediments, and nutrients downstream, and that can enhance ecosystems further downstream. They can help with flood mitigation by slowing and storing stormwater. They can provide recreation benefits, fishing, paddling. In some cases, streams are also used as a source of fresh water for livestock and irrigation. And there are also the carbon storage benefits through riparian vegetation and trees and shrubs. So this slide highlights some of the normal stream processes. So one of the key points is to know is that streams are dynamic and they're naturally going to be moving and meandering instead of running in a straight line. The movement and energy of water shifts from side to side, moving sediment, and that shapes the channels. So on the outside of bends, water moves faster and erodes banks, and on the inside of the bends, water slows down and deposits sediment. So it's normal if streams might overflow into floodplains in the spring or during storm events. And if you have logs, branches, or other organic matter falling into streams, this is creating shade and shelter for fish and aquatic life. So just some components of healthy streams. So a riparian buffer is that vegetated area along the stream or river on both sides. that helps protect water quality, stabilize the stream banks, and it supports wildlife. So most literature recommends a minimum of a 30-meter wide naturally vegetated riparian area to protect aquatic habitat. And ideally, these buffers would be as wide as possible. Yeah, and some of the other aspects of a healthy stream, the clear, cool, well-oxygenated water, stable stream banks, those buffers we talked about. In terms of aquatic habitat, just having that variety of different features such as pools, riffles, wood debris, gravel beds, boulders, as well as intact floodplains. Intact floodplains that are undeveloped may be interrupted by things out of our control, such as roads, bridges, and things such as that. So some of the possible features of degraded streams may include straightened or channelized streams, hardened banks, for example, concrete or armor stone walls, severe erosion, bank collapse, or large amounts of sediment, warm water temperature from the lack of shade, pollutants from runoff, such as pesticides or excess nutrients, and loss of vegetation or little or no vegetated buffer. Now I'm going to show a couple photos of a few examples of some degraded streams. As you can see in this photo, here's an example of a straightened stream. So there's virtually no buffer there. Looks like they just mow their grass right up to the edge of the bank. Here's an example of an extreme eroding bank. Here's some historical SSEA photos I found. As you can see, farmers would let cattle into the creek to drink their water. And a lot of these photos, these are the before photos, before SSEA or SSRAP projects took place. So the SSEA has been lucky enough to have some great relationships with many farmers in our watershed, completing livestock exclusion fencing, paired with alternate water sources for the cattle, as well as planting in that riparian area to improve and protect water quality. So some stream rehabilitation techniques that can be used. Big ones are riparian planting of trees, shrubs, and grasses to stabilize the banks. As we said, keeping livestock out of the streams by installing that fencing. In some cases, adding large woody material for extra habitat if there's lacking. And more the larger scale, like redesigning the channel or remeandering straightened streams. Yeah, just a note that some of these projects and techniques may require permits from municipal, provincial, or federal agencies for some of that type of work. So that's just good to know. Here's some more historical SSEA photos I found. At the top there, they're in the process of creating a low-level crossing, so adding that gravel and rock there so the cattle can cross the stream when the levels are low. And then that photo at the bottom there is a photo of a livestock exclusion fencing paired with that stream crossing, so the cattle can safely get across. Another photo I found, so this is at this site they used Christmas tree revetments and they've been anchored into the stream, and that helps capture sediment, and this enhances conditions for the establishment of vegetation, and that'll keep the banks stable once all that vegetation has the time to establish. Just want to highlight this site here. So this is one of our sites in the Hogg Creek Watershed, and this is a great example of an SSEA project which involved livestock exclusion fencing. We added some stream crossings, and we paired that with riparian plantings. So as you can see, that's a pretty established riparian buffer on each side of the stream. So if you're looking at the top left photo, that was the before photo. So the cattle had access to the stream and they could, not much going on in the buffers there. So that one's from 1991. And then the photo on the top right is from 2003, and that's after the installation of that exclusion fencing and paired with the plantings. So you can see that it's already off to a great start just from those 12 years. And then at the bottom there is more of an aerial shot, and that one is from 2021. So you can see that's looking super well established there. And some of the things that landowners can do, definitely protecting existing natural vegetation along the streams, leaving woody debris in the streams, unless in some extreme cases, you might have to remove some blockages in the streams. Definitely planting native trees, shrubs, and grasses in those riparian zones. It's good to monitor and remove invasive plant species. Like we said, keeping the livestock out of streams as well. Yeah, limit your mowing and fertilizer use near streams. If you can, don't mow right up to the edge of streams. Make sure to maintain that buffer. Quick and easy, you could remove garbage and litter from the streams if you see any. Participate in citizen science programs or monitoring, and connect with organizations for support and funding. So that's the end of my presentation, just quick and easy. So thank you everyone for listening. Through the Hogg Creek Project, we are still looking for landowners for site visits, so you can email me and we can get those arranged. We're also gearing up for some potential fall planting or invasive species removal events. So if anyone's interested in doing some volunteering, you can email me as well. And yeah, thanks again for listening.